Hello and welcome to the vBrownbag Tech Talk on deploying OpenStack Fibre Channel clouds. My name is Beausoleil and I'm joined by Garth Booth. For today's Tech Talk, I'd like to discuss the history of how we got Fibre Channel into OpenStack, some of the reference architectures that we've deployed and tested, and go through essentially how OpenStack works, and we'll follow this with a demo of an actual deployment. Then we'll end with some features. So a little bit about how we got into the whole OpenStack and extending Fibre Channel support into OpenStack. Many large enterprise customers have an established Fibre Channel environment where they've been managing for the last 10 plus years. And their Fibre Channel environment supports a lot of their mission-critical applications. So when it comes to leveraging some of their Fibre Channel storage to deploy in an OpenStack cloud environment, a private cloud environment, they'll want to know how can they go about doing this? What are some of the best practices? What are some of the opportunities here? So what we've done 2 years ago, back at the Grizzly Design Summit in San Diego, myself, together with some other storage vendors, including IBM, HP, and EMC, proposed introducing an extension to the Cinder component, that's the block component of OpenStack, to support Fibre Channel. So there were two blueprint proposals, two enhancements to Cinder that was proposed. One was a Fibre Channel Volume Manager, and the Fibre Channel Volume Manager was delivered in the Grizzly release, right? And then there was a Fibre Channel Zone Manager, which was implemented in the Icehouse release, right? So with the Volume Manager and the Zone Manager, many customers and enterprise customers can now deploy Fibre Channel support, take advantage of their Fibre Channel storage for their cloud OpenStack deployments. In addition to getting the Fibre Channel support in Cinder, we also have been participating in many of the OpenStack community events, including the OpenStack summits. We had our very first OpenStack session at Grizzly back at the Havana Design Summit. And then we've also done a previous vBrownbag Tech Talk. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about our test environment and the reference architecture that we'll be using. My colleague, Garth Booth, will be going through an actual demo of this environment. And what you're looking at here is it's a basic SAN topology with an A and B fabric, and it's composed of Brocade Gen 5 Fibre Channel switches with 3-POR arrays. Now, in addition to this basic environment, we also have a more complex SAN environment, and this is a core edge core mesh deployment, where again we're leveraging Brocade Gen 5 Fibre Channel switches with the 3-POR storage arrays, and this environment has been tested, but for purposes of the demo, we're going to go back to leveraging the basic SAN. So what I'm going to do now is transition over to my colleague Garth and let him show you the actual demo of the Fibre Channel deployment here.
Thank you, Andre. Yes, before I do the demo, I wanted to share with you just the basic kind of how it works. So Fibre Channel Zone management is a little bit complex, but it does alleviate a lot of the manual tasks that users typically have to do. So how does it actually work? Okay, let me walk you through this. So initially what's going to happen is Nova is going to essentially find a compute host to actually attach that volume to a specific VM. And so essentially Nova is going to initiate connections, initialize connections. It's going to pass the initiators from the particular host that VM is on, where the volume is going to be attached to sender. Sender is then going to basically call the volume manager to initialize connections. Essentially, the volume manager is just going to call the Fibre channel volume driver, which in this case is going to be a 3-par Fibre channel driver. And a couple of things are going to happen here where the automation of the whole Fibre channel zoning process kicks in. So first, we need to find out what initiators and targets are actually connected. So what's going to happen is the Fibre channel zone driver is going to actually call the lookup service for the fabric that's actually being used. In this case, it's going to be a brocade fabric. That's going to actually then return a list of the targets and initiators that are actually able to talk to each other, and essentially it's going to allow the actual array, in this case again 3-par, to do two things. One, create a host to actually support the compute node that's actually going to be used to attach the volume, and also export a VLAN in 3-par terminology to that particular host. So once that happens, actually on the return path from that, there's some annotation or decorators on the actual initialized connections, which are actually going to now automatically set up the zoning in the brocade fabric. So that's going to initialize the actual zones for the initiators and targets that are actually able to talk to each other on the fabric. And now, voila, you actually have a automatically configured fabric and the zoning already set up, and now the actual volume is attached to the host. So before I kick in the demo, let me do two things. One, I'm going to talk about the actual environment. So as Andre mentioned, we have a fairly complex topology you can select from. You can do flat sands, you can do mesh sands, you can do core edge core or edge core edge. In this case, we're just going to do a single host, switch, and storage array. Now, what you also need to do is you need to properly configure senders. So what I've done is I've split this. This is a single file, but in order to make this a little bit readable, I split it into two slides. So first, you need to set the actual zoning mode to fabric. Okay, so that needs to be done. The second thing you need to do is set up your Fibre channel zone manager. You need to set up the actual fabric, in this case, again, a brocade fabric. And then you also need to make sure you have a backend configured properly to actually support that configuration. Okay, all of this is documented in the admin guide, so this is just an example that shows you a brocade fabric in a 3-par array. So with no further ado, let me go ahead and actually start the demo here. Okay, so what's going to happen here, essentially several things as I alluded to in the how it works. So essentially what's going to happen here is we're actually going to go through the actual configuration of the sender.conf. So I'm going to speed this up slightly. So essentially what you're seeing now is the actual demonstration of what you need to do to change sender.conf. And so I'm going to speed through that. Okay, so what I'm going to show here now is essentially the actual fabric before we actually initialize the actual Nova attached to the volume, to the VM. So what you're seeing here is that there's no zones created in the fabric, so you'll see no zones created with prepended with OpenStack, both the defined and effective configurations. And then on the 3-par IMC management console, what you'll see here is that there's no host. So the host we're using is C3-HP9300-01. So when we come back after we actually do the volume attach, you'll see a new host configured here. Okay. The second thing you'll see here is that there's no actual LUN attached right now for that particular host. So you'll also see a VLAN get created with the IMC management console once we actually run the actual attach operation. Okay, so that's really the before we actually do the attach. So let's actually execute the actual attach operation. So I'm going to again speed this forward a little bit. So we're now at Horizon, so we've actually pre-configured a couple of volumes, FC Zone Manager Volume 1 and 2. So I'm going to go ahead and select 1, and then I'm going to actually initiate the attach operation for that volume to a particular VM instance that, again, I've already pre-created prior to actually doing this demo. So now we're going to go ahead and select one of those VMs. Okay. And before we actually run this, what I want to do is actually go back to my PuTTY window, and I'll actually show you what's going to happen. I'm running a dev stack here. So there's two screens I have configured. I have essentially a the Nova compute and the volume. This is showing you the volume screen for DevStack, and essentially what you're seeing now, I've actually kicked off the attach. You're actually seeing the same steps that I walked through earlier happen, where we're actually doing the actual attach operation, creating the automatic zones, and then ultimately returning back to Nova with that information. Okay, so let me speed up a little bit here to get through the demo here. So again, all of that operation is happening. And so what's going to happen now, you'll actually see the actual volume go from attaching to an attached state. So we'll give that 2 seconds and it will be pretty much wrapped up. Okay, you can see now that that volume is now attached to the virtual machine that we actually selected. So for expediency's sake, what I'm going to do is just show you one example of what's happened here. So you'll see that right here, there's several zones that have been automatically created, which have the OpenStack prefix. And then I'll also show you real quickly on the array that now you have a host that's automatically been created, C3 HPX 9300-01. And then you also have a VLAN that's actually been exported to that host as part of the automatic zoning configuration. So let's go ahead and wrap up. And so what I want to do is turn it back over to Andre, and he can tell you about some of the features that we're working on for Fibre Channel Zone Manager.
Okay, thank you, Garth. So we saw how a VM can request Fibre Channel volumes, and if there's a Fibre Channel or Fabric enablement, how the FC Zone Manager is able to automatically perform the zoning and returning that volume back to the application requesting it. So we do have, hopefully, a good understanding based on how this works. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing in terms of future enhancements to the Fibre Channel support that is part of Cinder today. For the Kilo release, which is our next major release, we'll be planning to support virtual fabrics. We're also looking into providing support for adding zone management alias name support as part of the Kilo release. And then beyond Kilo, we're looking at opportunities for addressing quality of service, as well as being able to promote some of the volume statistics that's part of the SAN. So those are some of the major items. We'll also continue to enhance scalability requirements, understanding that these are evolving for the enterprise customers. So stay tuned for some of that as well. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for your time and attending this session on leveraging Fibre Channel environment within your OpenStack private cloud deployment. We hope that this information was useful and provides you a basis for further investigation. Thank you very much.